everyone, I'm Adelina and I'm filling in for Ina on this episode of Musing Mums. I'm here with Racheal Kwacs. She's a child and family development specialist, and on this episode we're going to talk about how can parents encourage our kids without pushing our expectations on them.
Hi Adelina, how are you?
I'm good. Do you want to say something to our audience as well?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Racheal. I'm a child and family development specialist. I believe so strongly in respectful parenting, and what it really is, it just means that we learn to see the world through our children's eyes, but still be a parent at the same time. And that means no shaming, no bribing, no punishing, and no guilting.
So in the context of like bringing up children, making sure they're, as parents, we want them to be healthy, we want them to be happy, and for quite a few of us too, we want them to have some kind of success in life, or at least to be comfortable in what they choose to do. So how can we balance then between overparenting and underparenting?
I think the first thing to really look at is to look at your child. I think so many times we parent from a place where these are our expectations of them, this is what the world expects of them, this is what I think it should be. But the first thing we really need to do is look at our child and what are their interests and who are they and what are they trying to tell you. And when you come from that perspective, without thinking about all your other stuff that we're going to pile onto them, you really get to then shape and form this child that is going to be a citizen of the world, that's passionate, that believes in themselves, that is able to do everything and anything because they know that they are able to do everything and anything.
Okay. So how then can parents go about creating this level of confidence and trust between their own children?
I think the first thing is to actually trust your child. I just came back from Beijing and I studied under this amazing RAI. She was the executive director of RAI, and her name's Deborah Carlyle. And she talks about the idea that we don't trust our children enough. And when she says we don't trust our children enough, it's because your kid is about to fall and you instantly go there and pick them up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or your kid might get hurt.
That's right, yeah.
Or your kid might get a broken heart. Or your kid might get bullied, right? And so we go in and we save the day. But what that does when we go in and save the day is it tells them, you're not capable of saving yourself. I have to be there. And so when you start this from young, so I strongly believe in respectful parenting. When you start respectful parenting from young, it not only teaches these kids to be a whole lot more intuitive to their feelings, but it also makes them a lot more confident, a lot more calm, a lot more kind, and also absolutely compassionate and capable and confident. And so in order for us to teach these children to trust themselves and to not build up false expectations of them, we really do have to practice it from young.
Okay. So from young would be, what is a good age to start them on? No, it's just an ongoing process, like from the time they're an infant onwards.
Absolutely, from the time they're infant. So RAI, and back to what I believe in, what I've been trained in America and in Malaysia and across Southeast Asia, is this idea of respectful parenting doesn't start when they reach a certain age. It doesn't start when they start school. It starts from the day that they are born. It starts from the idea that a baby is whole and capable and a person of itself, right? Himself or herself. And so we address this baby, even though they're a teeny tiny baby. When we do their diaper, we tell them, I'm going to change your diaper now. And we wait and we pause and we listen to what they tell us. And I know it sounds very airy-fairy, but I've seen it work again and again and again and again.
Okay, and because you would know, because you're a mom of a toddler as well, so you were going through that with her.
Yes. Yeah. It's so funny that we talk about this, because just a few days ago, I wrote on my Instagram about how my daughter came home from school and she talked about how somebody had bullied her on the playground. And as a mom, your heart just breaks, because she tells me, Mama, I was kind to them, and they still told me no. And Mama, I really wanted to play with them, but they were just really mean, and they told me to go away. And my heart, as a mom, I just wanted to go back. I wanted to go back to the playground and tell these kids off, because I wanted to protect her from the hurt.
Yeah.
But as a child and family development specialist, I knew I had to sit there with her feelings and validate them and acknowledge them, and then I had to trust her. So I had to empower her. So I said, I am so sorry that they did that to you. What? And then, but more so than then, I put the power back in her hands. I said, next time if this happens again, what can you do about it? And it's letting them come out with their ideas of what they think should happen, because in the end they have to live their lives. She has to make peace with it. When I don't push my expectations on her, the great thing about that is that she becomes a whole lot more independent. And the thing is, I'm not always going to be there for the rest of her life. She's 3 and she's already had instances where I'm not there, and she gets bullied and she gets hurt. And so how then do I prepare her for those places if I don't actually address those places?
I think it's very interesting that you brought up about, actually, it's not just about you trust your child, but you also you instill in them values. You still counsel them. You're there. You're present with them. You tell them, like, I'm so sorry this happened to you, but also perhaps like this is how you could approach it in the future or moving forward. Because I think as Asian parents, there's really 2 ways of thinking about it. It's either you go all out, you bring your child there and you like start scolding all the children in the playground, or you just, the second approach is you just go, why you're like that? It's like, just toughen up, just deal with it. This is the world.
Or you sort of shame them into like, Sila, you did this, and that's why that happened to you, Yeah. Or you say, never mind, let's say face. It's okay, let them be, right?
Yes.
And the problem with that is that, we all have those feelings of when we were young, or even in our workplaces now, or in our homes. We have those feelings when we felt something and someone doesn't validate it, right? Somebody says, that didn't exist, or that's not how you should have acted, or why did you do that? And really what you want them to say is, man, that happened to you and that really hurts. I am so sorry, right? So you take a breather with them and you say, that happened to you, I'm so sorry, and then we fix it. So many times, I think as parents, we rush into the thing because we're afraid ourselves, right?
That's right.
We are scared that they're going to get hurt. We're scared that they're going to be like terrible children. We're scared that like we've done a terrible job parenting. And so we go in there, guns blazing, we fix everything. And then these are the kids that then turn around and are angry or harbor all these feelings, or then going out and throwing tantrums, and you're like, what is going on? And I don't understand. My kid never listens to me. And then I turn around and ask them, but do you listen to your kids?
That's true. And these kids grow up and they become parents themselves, and then the cycle continues.
Yes, it's a vicious cycle. But to also know that at any point we can break the cycle. At any point we can say, I'm going to choose to parent differently. But with that comes knowledge, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So knowledge comes, and then we have the tools.
That's right. Yeah.
And then the thing that I want every parent to know as they're listening to this is that, look, you're going to fail a bunch of times. There's a bunch of times where I am a child and family development specialist. I've studied this, lived this, trained this for the last 20 years, and I still make mistakes. You're not going to get it perfect the first time. You're not even going to get it perfect the 100th time. But the idea is that you keep trying, and because what that's going to teach your child is that, hey, we're going to make a bunch of mistakes. We're going to screw up every once in a while. We're going to say things that we don't mean. Now, my job as a parent, as her mom, as a child and family development specialist, is to teach her, what do we do when we screw up? What do we do when somebody hurts us? What do we do when somebody is putting on really like peer pressure? Somebody is telling us we should do something that we don't believe in. And if you allow them the space to grow, if you allow them the space to have a voice, then they're going to be able to have a voice to come back and say, that is not who I am, and I will choose to be different.
Okay.
I will choose to rise.
That's true. That's very true, because I think a lot of parents, we overparent or we underparent because it's coming from a place of we want
love.
to be perfect parents. Yes, it's love. We want to be perfect for our children.
Yes.
We want to do everything right by the book.
Yes.
From what we've heard from friends and family, we think it has to be a certain way.
Yes.
So how then can we go about getting this knowledge to bring up our kids according to not to what makes them happy, to what they want to be? Like how should, like, we really have no clue, for example, like. Yeah, I mean, it happens. I think as parents, we are so overwhelmed sometimes. It's like
absolutely.
We don't know where to start.
And like everybody will tell you a different method, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody will tell you, oh, you should do ABC, and then I'm going to come in here and tell you, hey, you should do ABC, and then somebody else is going to tell you ABC, and here's like, if you strip everything away, you listen to your gut. Right? And that's what I always say. Like, I always say respectful parenting is the easy way. I mean, there's a lot of steps to it, and sometimes there's a lot of like work that needs to be done, like hard heart work, right? Mm-hmm. But it's also the easy way, because all I have to do is I have to sit there in that moment and say, first I'm going to listen to my gut, right? I'm going to say, what does my gut say? What does my mama gut say? Mm-hmm. And there's a very big difference between listening to your fears and listening to your gut, because your gut always knows. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that I'm going to sit there in the situation. So my kid is, I don't know, give me a situation. What situation would you?
For example, okay, your kid tells you, for example, that she wants to be a comic artist in the future, but your parental instincts say, oh, but that's going to be really tough for her. She will have to work really hard, and there's no guarantee of success or even a cushy income. And so as a parent, as a mom, you're thinking, no, don't do that. Don't go down that path. Be something that you will earn like a good income. Right. You'll be happy.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the first thing is that's very Asian, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's my degree is actually in child and family development and theatre. So my heart of hearts was when I was young, I wanted to do theatre, and theatre has come in so helpful for me in my workshops. But my parents and society also told me, you better get like a proper job, right? Like you better get a proper degree. Like you can't just play and fool around with theatre. And so that's what I did. I did theatre and child and family development at the same time, and it has served me very well. But the first thing I want to say is if you sit down and think about it, you know, who says a comic artist isn't going to be successful? I can think of so many comic artists that are successful. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's this whole publishing company called Corporate Comics that has a whole line of successful comic artists that are making bank, right? Mm-hmm. So the only person that is holding them back is your preconceptions of whatever their idea of what the world should be. I mean, even if your kid says, hey, mom, I want to be a fairy unicorn princess, right? Yeah. And then so you sit there and you're like, a fairy unicorn princess. But the idea is that if we build creativity in our children, if we build independence in our children. So I'm not going to sit here and tell her, you can't be a fairy unicorn princess because there's no such thing. I'm going to say, you define what your fairy unicorn princess is. Right? I think parents really need to hear that, because sometimes we think like, there's no way this is going to happen. I shouldn't let her keep having these dreams that are not going to happen. My responsibility as a parent is to provide her with the best opportunities, right? My responsibility as a parent is to provide her with love, provide her with care, provide her to let her know who she is, right? Mm-hmm. And what she's capable of, and that I believe in her. And so I have to believe in her in the little things, and it's little things in her saying, I want to be a fairy unicorn princess, and it's me saying, you can be whatever you choose to be, however you decide you want it to be, right? And then after that, I am going to say, I'm going to draw her. I mean, clearly the world has boundaries, right? So there are certain boundaries that she has to live within, you know, and so it's freedom within those boundaries. So you have to have a job, like a real job, a proper job. You have to be able to pay for your bills. You have to be able to support yourself. You have to, I would like to think that I hope you're happy, and I hope you're passionate about whatever you do. Those would really be my only boundaries. Within that, that's up to you to be creative. And if we don't allow them the creativity to imagine that they could be fairy princess unicorns, then we're severely limiting them.
Okay, so what you're also saying is that encourage their creativity, but at the same time also see how that can gel in with more realistic expectations.
That's right. I mean, they are real world boundaries, right? We have to pay bills. We have to be able to eat. We have to be. And that's the thing. It's sort of like, the kids at the playground. I'm not going to. If I go back there and if I say, you have to play with my child, that's not realistic, because someday when she goes away to college, somebody's going to hurt her and somebody's going to say, and they're going to get mean, right? So that's not real world, that's not realistic. So what I need to do is I say, this has happened, these are your boundaries. Your boundaries is they don't want to play with you. What can you do about it? Can you maybe learn to be friends with them? Can you maybe choose to play somewhere else? Can you maybe take turns, learn to compromise? Whatever it is that she decides is worth it to her. But I've given her the boundaries, which is that they don't want to play with you and you can't hurt them and they can't hurt you, right?
That's right, yeah. And having these tools, I think it's so important, because your kids are going to grow up, they're going to bring this into the workplace, into how they deal with their own family, their own kids in the future.
Yes, and remember earlier when I said respectful parenting is so much about the easy way out, right? Because there's no every time I get stuck in what should I really do in this situation, all I have to do is say, what do I want her to do when she's older? Right? Whether it's she's lied to me, or whether somebody's lying to her, or whether her job career, or whether she's hit someone, or whether, what do I want her to know in the future? And that is how I parent, and that's how I come in, and which means that we are honest with her, age appropriate honest with her. If she says, and when we talk about death and we talk about hard stuff, we don't lie, because when she's older, I don't want her then to come back and say, what did you lie about?
Right, yeah, because we'll tell our kids, your pet or your grandparent went somewhere far away.
Yes.
Instead of saying, they've died. Should we use the word died, or should we
absolutely
use, okay,
absolutely.
So
you can say passed. No, you can say passed away.
Okay.
You can say died, and you can even talk about if you're spiritual, you can talk about what you believe, whatever your beliefs are, whatever is true to you. Right? That's what they believe. Because when doctors use this all the time. Doctors don't say, they're very certain to say that the patient has passed away. Right? It's very finite. Because when you use words like, oh, they went away, then the kids go, are they coming back?
That's right.
And can you just imagine this little kid who's confused and doesn't understand what's going on, is just sitting there waiting and wondering if they've gone and why won't they come back? And then what does that become? It becomes abandonment, or it becomes, was I not enough, or why won't they come back? Why do they not love me anymore?
That's
and then
yeah.
Because we're not being honest with each other,
create more issues from that, and because we lie to our child,
yes,
so they would think that it's okay, and they would mirror what
absolutely
we're doing.
Yes, that's the first thing I always teach parents when I say about no shaming, no bribing, no hitting, no punishing, no guilting. So many times parents say, oh, I hit because I'm trying to teach them about, I'm hitting out on love. Well, when somebody steals your kid's car from them, or whatever, whatever injustice to them, that's a really big injustice, and so they're hitting out of love too. Or maybe they're just hitting because that's what mom and dad do when they're really upset with me, and right now I'm really upset, so therefore I should hit to let them know how upset I am.
Yeah, and then when they start doing that in school, and it becomes bullying, and then you get pulled in, and then you have to explain to them it's not right.
Yes. And to also understand that it's developmentally appropriate for kids to explore hitting, pushing, lying, and all these other bad, terrible things that we perceive them to be. But if we just sit in the moment and say, okay, what's really going on here? And do they have the impulse control to control it, to say, oh, I shouldn't be hitting, I shouldn't be pushing, I shouldn't be shoving, I shouldn't be spitting, I shouldn't be biting, and then to come back and teach them a more appropriate way, right? To talk them through it, see what the problem is. Remember I said, acknowledge the problem. That's right. You wanted a toy, you didn't get the toy. What can we do better about getting the toy next time? But if we sit there and we hit them for them hitting,
you don't really learn anything from that.
Yeah. All I've learned is that if I hit others, mama will hit me, so I can hit others too.
Yeah, and then you learn violence is the answer.
Yes, which is a terror. And that's a whole other podcast.
Good, we'll do that next time. Yeah, we have to remember that. Okay. Okay, so there's signs then of overparenting that parents we have to be careful of, that we need to be aware, because sometimes we may not even know that we are overparenting our child. We think it's doing our duty as a parent, but actually maybe we've overstepped that boundary and we're creating this situation of codependence between us and our child.
I think it's the idea of, again, listening to your child, right? Looking at your child, observing your child. And is your child fearful of you? You know, as in, if they've made a mistake, are they afraid to tell you, or do they hide? And the other really good way to tell is also, are they constantly, you know, and this is a very thin line, but as a child, you know, you always seek validation from your parents, right? You always seek validation. But is this child able to function without the validation, right? Because maybe they're just so hungry for the praise, because that's all you do. You just praise again and again and again and again. And it ends up being the child turning around and thinking that unless my parents say good job or well done, that, and if they don't say that, it means I did a terrible job.
Yeah, I think
right?
a lot of us grew up thinking that we had to bring back, like, we had to get at least an A in our exam. If not, we'll we'll smash up the paper, like hide it somewhere and not let our parents see it. Yes. Yeah. So it's okay to tell your child that they're in the that they're in the wrong, or how do you give constructive criticism to them? Absolutely.
I mean, again, what would you do in the future? Someday her boss is going to tell her, hey, you messed up. Someday some teacher's going to say, hey, you messed up, right? Yeah. And so my job is not to never tell her she messed up, because there are parents that will do that too. There are parents that will be like, you know, we never want to hurt her, right? And then on the other spectrum, there are parents that are like, just shame you all day long, right? So I got to find the middle ground, which is that I have to teach you that there are rules and that you've made a mistake. But I'm also going to love you through it. So we take a little bit from this spectrum, and we take a little bit from this spectrum, and we draw those boundaries. We give them freedom within those boundaries, but there are consequences. There is also love, and there is also empathy, and there is also understanding. But more so than that, it's trusting your child. It's saying, I can trust you to make a mistake, and I can trust you to learn how to fix your mistake.
I think it's trusting yourself as a parent to trust your child. You have to trust yourself as well.
Absolutely. And it's so much easier said than done. I mean, as a mom, I can tell you the mom guilt is like one of the worst things, the worst feelings in the world, right? But again, it goes back to, I have to listen to my gut and not my fears. I have to know who I am. I have to be present and whole for my child. And when I'm feeling the guilt, I need to lean into it and find out, what is it really about? Is it because I feel like I failed myself? Or is it because somebody's making me feel that way? Or is it just in my head? And most of the time, it's just in my head.
We stay in our heads a lot.
Yes.
And sometimes it's not even society's expectations there's that, but we give ourselves a lot of pressure. A lot of those expectations are created by ourselves.
And you know what the secret to that is? The secret to mom guilt, the secret to being able to parent your child well, is to make sure to constantly take time for yourself, and to also take time for your marriage, because you cannot pour from an empty cup. And so many times when you have parents that are hitting, or parents that are overwhelmed, or parents that are stressed out, the first question they ask is, when was the last time you guys went on a date? Or when was the last time you took some time for yourself? Because I don't know about you, but like, no matter how great of a parent I am, if my cup is not filled, I cannot. I'm just a really bad parent.
You have to be happy yourself.
Because you're grumpy and you're tired and you haven't had sleep and you haven't had any fun. And how do you expect to show up for your child when you have nothing left to give?
Yeah. So it's very important to have self-care, and to not just self-care, but also to spend quality time with your partner, with your spouse.
Yes, because I don't know about you, but when after I got with a date, I'm like the best parent ever. Mostly because I get my cup filled, but also because I feel the support. it's me and my husband against the world, right? And so I am able, when we're connected and we're close and when we're intimate, I can be able to tell him like, oh man, I had a really rough day with Ella Grace today. And he's able to say, oh, you had a really rough day with Ella Grace today. I'm so sorry. When you're yelling about socks on the floor, you need to go on a date.
And I think because if you and your partner are on the same wavelength, you're sending the same message to your child as well. There's no confusion. They wouldn't know, like, do I listen to mommy or daddy?
Yes. And certainly it's respecting each other. So I'm not just teaching my child to respect me, I'm also teaching my child to respect herself, but also to respect each other, right? That daddy might have an opinion, and sometimes daddy might have an opinion that's different from mama. And letting her see the way we work that out respectfully, kindly, and saying, well, I mean, sometimes it's as easy as which ice cream should we buy? I always like chocolate. My husband always likes vanilla. And so and if you parent in respectful parenting long enough, your child will probably come back, and she's told this to us because we play fight, right? And then she'll come back and say, well, maybe, how do you feel about if mama gets chocolate this time and daddy gets vanilla the next time?
I'm glad you brought this up because I think it shows also that we don't have to be afraid of conflict, and we don't have to show our kids that they have to fear conflict. In fact, you can work through conflict.
Yes, absolutely. So many people grow up, and when they get into their marriages, they don't know how to handle conflict because they've never seen their mom and dad fight. So in their ideal world, they think that mommies and daddies don't fight. But really, mommy and daddy were fighting behind closed doors, but you never saw that, right? And I'm not saying like have a brawl, right? Have a knockout fight, but it's to again lean into the truth and trust your child and say that, look, sometimes people have different opinions. This is what we're going to wish that they can do when they grow up, right? Is to understand that people have different opinions, and how do we work around those opinions?
Okay, I think as adults we really need to remember that too, and really practice that.
Yes. Okay. It's so hard, and I mean, certainly my hopes as a mom, for Ella Grace is the world. I hope that she discovers who she is. I hope that she conquers the world, and definitely it's hard. It's an active practice to not have expectations of her.
That's right.
But it's also an active practice to say, I will choose you. I see you. I hear you. I love you.
Thank you for sharing that, Racheal. So just to sum it up, we can be respectful parents by learning to separate our fear from our gut instinct, and just trusting our child to be who they are and to reach their full potential.
Yeah, and to give them the freedom to be creative, right? Let them go be the fairy unicorn princess.
So just let them go wild, encourage them.
Yes, because that's how CEOs and then world changes are built, right?
Yeah, so create that
freedom within boundaries.
That's right. Thank you for putting it that way.
Definitely have boundaries. That's when definitely have boundaries. Everybody needs boundaries. But to also be very clear about, are those boundaries fair to your child, and is that going to grow them, or is that going to restrict them?
So I hope this episode has helped you. For those who are listening in, will help you to have a better idea of how you can bring up your children through respectful parenting methods for them to fulfill their full potential, and it's their potential, not what you want of them. Yeah. So thank you, Racheal.
Thank you, Adelina. Thank you, guys.